My name is Cleon of Attica, a quiet voice among the olive trees, a walker of sun-warmed paths, and a patient teller of ordinary things. If you will let me, I will walk beside you tonight through the soft spaces of an ancient day. We will follow the light as it opens over stone and field, and we will notice the smallest motions, the steam from a clay cup, the creak of a door, the settled hush of a courtyard as the morning warms. I will not hurry you. I will speak slowly, as a friend who understands the gentle weight of sleep, and I will carry you through the calm and simple patterns of life as it was lived by people who woke to roosters and went to bed by stars. I am not a hero or a poet, not a general or a sage, but a listener. I listen to baskets brushing sand, to sandals on packed earth, to threads sliding through fingers. I know the shapes of rooms that face inward, folding around a courtyard bright with sky. I know the smell of bread touched by smoke and olive oil, and the cool roughness of water drawn at dawn. When I say the names of familiar things, chiton and peplos, hearth and all, fig and barley, you may feel the day stretch out like a quiet path before you. There is no need to remember everything. Let these words pass like slow waves. Let them carry you. We will meet households built from mud, brick and timber, with clay tiles that hold the sun. We will see markets that wake with low voices and careful hands, schools where children scratch letters on wax tablets, and workshops where wood and bronze learn their shapes. We will taste simple food that comforts, bread, olives, cheese, figs, and share a cup of watered wine while the courtyard shade turns and turns. We will put on soft clothes with easy folds, and we will sit together as lamps begin to glow. You may rest here. I will keep the pace. I will keep the thread. Sleep will find you gently in the ordinary life of ancient Greece. If you wish, close your eyes now. But before you do so, please like the video and subscribe to our channel, if you find that our story offers you pleasure and the serenity that you need. I will guide you through 10 small chapters, each one a room of its own. In each room, the light will change, the air will move, the day will grow and soften. I am Cleon, and I am ready to begin. Chapter 1: Dawn in the Courtyard. The night still clings to the roof tiles when the first quiet note of dawn threads through the courtyard. No trumpet of sunrise, no burst of color, just a slow lifting of darkness, like a thin cloth drawn back from a sleeping face. Above, the sky is a deep violet that remembers stars. Below, the worn stones under your feet are cool, holding yesterday's shadows a moment longer. A single cricket chirps once, as if checking the hour, then folds itself into silence. You breathe in air that tastes faintly of smoke gone cold and dust gone still. All around you the house is more suggestion than shape, pale walls blurred by half-light, doorways outlined by deeper gray, an olive branch leaning over the parapet like a drowsy sentinel. It is a pause between worlds, the last exhale of night before the long inhale of day. Somewhere, just beyond the street wall, a rooster lifts his throat and tests it with a soft crow, not the full-bodied call that will come later, but a polite rehearsal. The sound flutters across roof tiles, slips through the small window of an upper room, and nudges the household spirits awake. Inside the women's quarters a loom stands motionless, its warp threads faintly silver in the dawn, in the storeroom amphory of last year's oil rest hip to hip, dreaming of olives still on the tree. A sleeping child turns beneath a thin wool blanket, one small foot escaping into the cool. Beside the doorway, a broom made of tamarisk twigs waits in patient attention, its bristles bound by linen cord that smells, ever so lightly, of summer's dust. Even the clay floor seems to listen, as if the house itself wishes to rise carefully, not to disturb the hush it has guarded through the dark. You cross the courtyard on bare feet, feeling each stone's gentle difference, one flat as river water, another ridged like a finger's print. At the central drain a tiny puddle has gathered from last night's condensation. It reflects a slice of sky pale enough to hint at the coming blue. You crouch and touch the water. It is colder than your skin and startlingly real, grounding you to the day that is about to open. You lift the clay jug that stands beside the drain, its handle smooth from years of morning use. When the jug tilts, the water's first drop is loud in the silence, then a small stream follows, pattering into a shallow basin of reddish pottery. The sound is delicate, like beads poured onto silk, yet it fills the courtyard. It is the house's signal: awaken, cleanse, begin. With both hands you scoop the water and cup it to your face. The chill meets eyelids, cheeks, temples. You do not rush it away. Instead you let the droplets linger, tracing slow paths down the neck of your chiton, stippling the linen with tiny stars. Somewhere inside your ribs a knot you did not know you carried unties itself. You breathe again, deeper, and the air is edged with thyme from the herb jar that hangs near the kitchen arch. Above you, light strengthens by half a shade. The sky has decided on morning. In the hearth room, an hour-old bed of charcoal waits under a drift of ash. You kneel and coax it back to life the way a potter coaxes clay, gently, steadily, believing in the glow before you see it. A reed stalk blown hollow by winter fire is your bellows. You place it to the coals and send 3 calm breaths along its length. Each breath is a gift of trust, and the embers accept. First one edge blushes, then a grain of black snaps bright orange, then another. Soon a thin flame curls toward a waiting nest of twigs scented faintly of resin. The newborn flame wavers as if shy, then steadies once it understands its task: to make porridge from barley, to warm the room, to carry yesterday's stories into today's hands. You set a small bronze pot above the flame, pour in water from the same jug whose belly is already lighter, and add a pinch of salt that gleams like crushed seashells. The barley grits follow in a hush, settling to the bottom with quiet confidence. As the water begins its slow rotation, tiny bubbles gather at the rim, reluctant but inevitable travelers. You stir with an olive-wood spoon, its bowl darkened by years of oil and heat. The scent is subtle: grain, smoke, the faintest echo of goat's milk dried on the pot's lip from the last meal. Breakfast will be no banquet, yet it is enough, always enough, for those who measure plenty by steadiness rather than by spectacle. Behind you, the door curtain parts, and another pair of bare feet pads into the courtyard. It is the lady of the house, hair loosely braided, eyes soft with newly broken sleep. She carries yesterday's bread wrapped in linen, a round loaf of barley and einkorn, its crust still murmuring of fire though the moon has crossed the sky since it was baked. Together you tear a strip from the loaf. Crumbs scatter onto the threshold, an offering so small it might seem accidental, yet both of you know the spirit's notice. You dip the bread into a shallow cup where last night's wine sleeps under a blanket of water. The bread soaks, darkening, loosening, until it can no longer remember the hardness of its crust. You raise it to your lips, chew slowly, and feel the grain open like a story upon the tongue. On the far wall of the courtyard hangs a bronze oil lamp, unlit, its wick trimmed before sleep. Now the lady lifts it from its hook and tips a thin line of yesterday's olive oil into its basin. She does not light it, day will do that work. but the gesture is part of morning's weaving, everything in its place, everything ready for the hour when it will be asked to shine. She replaces the lamp and, without words, moves to where the broom waits. Bristles meet stone in a soft rhythm, swish, pause, swish, tracing a spiral from the outer edges inward, as though drawing the household's thoughts toward the center where peace should settle. Dust rises in hesitant puffs, then drifts away on the faint breeze filtering over the roof. From behind an interior door, a low bleat breaks the morning spell. The household's small goat, kept for milk, announces that her own dawn rituals cannot be postponed. A youth, thin-armed, sun-bleached hair tousled, emerges with a wooden pail and leads the goat to a corner where sunlight has just begun to collect in a luminous puddle. There, with practiced gentleness, he strokes the animal's flank until the muscles relax. The first stream of milk taps the pail's bottom with a silver rhythm. Steam rises from the milk, mingling with the pale mist still lingering above the courtyard stones, making patterns that dissolve before they finish forming. To witness such ordinary magic is to remember that small things, repeated, hold a household together better than walls. The sky, no longer violet, edging toward peach, he casts a gentle blush upon the upstairs window. If you look closely, you can see the faint scratch of a wax tablet propped on a sill, alpha, beta, gamma written by a child's careful hand the night before, ready for correction after breakfast. A swallow swoops low, skimming the courtyard like a skimmed thought, then darts upward to settle on the roof ridge. From that vantage it gives a single chirrup, half greeting, half claim, before resuming its balance in the warming air. Now the porridge asks for attention, sending up bubbles that burst with soft plosives. You stir again, add a thread of honey from a small clay jar, and watch golden lines melt into pale grain. The smell of sweetness, never cloying, always humble, awakens memories of distant hillsides where bees fan their wings all summer. You portion the porridge into wide bowls that cool quickly in the morning air. A spoonful comes to your lips, the taste is plain, yet layered, earth from barley, fire from the hearth, salt from the sea carried inland as trade and trust, sweetness from blossoms you have never seen but believe in. This is how dawn teaches gratitude, not with thunder, but with modest syllables of flavor. The courtyard is brighter now, though the sun itself still hides behind the eastern wall. Light slips in sideways, stroking the plaster and discovering in it tiny flecks of mica that glitter briefly, like shy eyes. You notice that the olive branch on the parapet is greener than it seemed in twilight, its underside silvering when the breeze turns each leaf. A lizard appears on the threshold stone, tests the air with its tongue, then settles into stillness, as if it, too, wishes to listen. The day is expanding, but it has not yet learned to speak loudly. This is your shared secret hour, when the city beyond the wall whispers instead of shouts. You step to the doorway leading to the street. The bar is still in place, a narrow beam of seasoned pine polished by decades of hands. You lift it, feeling the weight like the lifting of a word that has been waiting all night to be said. The wooden door swings inward first, an old habit of courtesy to allow the private world to greet the public rather than the other way around, then outward onto a lane scarcely wide enough for 2 mules abreast. In that lane a neighbor appears, carrying a basket of kindling balanced on her hip. She nods, the small smile of someone who recognizes dawn's quiet fellowship, and moves on without breaking the hush. Back inside, the house begins to differentiate its rooms from each other. In the women's quarter, the loom's shuttle is lifted for its first gentle pass, stone weights swaying like slow pendulums beneath the warp. In the storeroom, the amphorae receive a brief knock from the steward, just a knuckle against clay, to be sure none have cracked in the cool of the night. In the men's guest room, the couches are unrolled and shaken, dust motes swirling in sunbeams that slant through the small, high window. Every motion is both task and ritual, every object answers the day with its own soft yes. At last the sun itself steps over the wall, first a rim of light, then a full disk the color of pomegranate rind. The courtyard stones shift from gray to gold, the shadow of the broom grows sharp, then softens as the light climbs. Heat is still only a promise, not yet a presence. You and the others pause, bowls empty, spoons laid aside, to acknowledge the moment when potential becomes certainty. No words are needed. Even the goat, now content and tethered, tilts her ears toward the light as if to receive instruction. You pour the last of the jug's water onto the courtyard stones, a small libation for the unseen protectors of thresholds. The water spreads, darkening the stone to the color of wet slate, then disappears, leaving behind a clean scent and a trust that the gesture was noted. The youth carries the pail of milk toward the kitchen, the lady folds the threshing cloth and places it on a shelf. The broom rests its bristles against the wall, task complete. And you? You stand in the center of the courtyard, the day opening around you like a slow flower, and you realize that dawn is not a moment but an unfolding, an agreement between stone and sky, between breath and purpose, between yesterday and the promise of today. So begins the ordinary life of this ancient Greek house, not with a shout but with a series of courteous whispers. The courtyard has received water, fire, bread, honey, and light. In return it offers calm, order, and the quiet courage to face whatever the sun decides to bring. The rooster finds his full voice now, crowing with conviction. The city beyond the wall readies its carts and its bargains, its gossip and its gossip's corrections. But inside these walls the first chapter of the day is finished, written in steam and shadow, sealed with the slow beat of hearts that know their rhythm. You may carry it with you, or you may let it slip away like the last coolness retreating from the stones. Either way, the morning has fulfilled its promise, and the story has only just begun. Chapter 2. Homes and Architecture. From the street, the house is almost a secret. A plain wall meets the lane with a practiced calm, its plaster sunbaked to the color of bread. No grand doorway announces wealth, no wide window invites the world to look in. A single, sturdy door, barred at night with a polished beam, keeps the city's noise outside and the family's life within. This is how an ancient Greek home begins, with reserve. Its beauty is meant for those who pass the threshold, not for those who pass by. Cross that threshold and the world opens. Beyond the modest entry, light gathers in a square of sky, a courtyard, the all, around which the house arranges itself like a garland. Here, life happens. Here, smoke breathes from a hearth, water rings against clay, conversation braids itself through the day and unbraids at night. The house is not a box of rooms but a small city of courtyards, porticos, and chambers tuned to the rhythm of shade and sun. Stand with your back to the door. Ahead, along the courtyard's north side, a shaded gallery runs column to column, the pastors, placed there to drink winter light and refuse the worst of summer heat. Architects without drawings, the builders worked with the compass of the body. Where does the wind come from? How does the sun fall? What do stones remember of coolness? Orientation matters, so do eaves, thresholds, and the quiet mathematics of proportion. The result is comfort without machines, a climate made by timber, tile, and tact. Look closely and you will see the layers of making. The lower part of the walls rises in a rough belt of fieldstone, heavy enough to carry weight, stubborn enough to resist damp. Above that, mud brick is stacked in courses, each brick the ghost of riverbed clay kneaded with straw and dried under the same sky that will shelter it. Timber ties stitch the walls like tendons, flexing when the earth shifts, asking the house to bend rather than break. Overhead, the roof is a rhythm of rafters and battens, dressed in terracotta tiles, broad pans and arched covers, that usher rain toward a gutter and a drain where a cistern waits. This courtyard is a cup for weather. In winter, the low sun pours in summer, shade lies like water under the gallery. A fig tree hovers above a clay drain. A shallow basin gathers rain and the day's ablutions, sending them quietly away. Windows are small, set high, their shutters of wood latched with twine. They do not frame views, they frame light. When opened, they pour narrow beams on plaster that holds a hand's memory and sometimes a brush's. The wealthiest houses dress their walls in color, bands of red ochre, greens like olive leaves, simple meanders, the geometry of restraint. Most keep to lime wash and cleanliness. Beauty lives in order and in the way sunlight moves. Rooms unfold from the all with purpose. Along one side you may find the women's quarter, the gyneconitis, a realm of weaving and storage, of jars brimming with oil and grain, of cradle songs and accounts kept in neat marks on wax. Along another, the andron, the men's guest room, reserves itself for formal meals and the long night talk of a symposium. Low couches line the walls, small tables wait like punctuation for cups. The floor might be stamped earth, swept to a hard sheen, or pebbled into patterns that resemble the sea's edge. Doors are curtains as often as wood, because privacy here is a change of sound as much as a bar of pine. In Athens, houses cluster like thoughts, tight, overlapping, necessary. Streets bend to ground and habit rather than decree, except where planners have persuaded a city to regularity. Down in Piraeus, the port, blocks run on a grid in the manner of Hippodamos, straight streets meeting like ideas at right angles. Far to the north, at Olynthus, whole neighborhoods repeat a pattern, the pastor's house, its rooms marching around a courtyard, its kitchen brasero near a drain, its storerooms measured to the amphora. The design travels in minds and hands more than in scrolls, it arrives as memory and settles as custom. The roof, read like a landscape from above, is a small country of decisions. Tiles overlap in disciplined rows, their weight keeping the wind honest. At the ridge, a curved crest cap shepherds reign to either side. Terracotta antefixes end each row with stylized leaves that seem to listen. Chimneys are few, smoke finds its way by patience through vents and doors. On some roofs, a swallow builds a nest where eve meets beam, and the house counts itself lucky. Climb the wooden stair and you enter a second story that is more suggestion than parade. The upper rooms are lighter, often timber-framed with wattle-daubed and lime-washed, floors of wood that answer your step with a note like a low string. Here children practice letters, merchants sort accounts, guests sleep when the ground rooms are more public than sleep allows. A narrow balcony might glance over the street, but it does not court attention. From above, the courtyard is a theatre in the round whose play is the day. Not all houses are city houses. Out past the walls, farms stake their claim in stones. A rural oikos spreads low and broad, its courtyard shared with tools and animals, its storage rooms lined like a ledger with amphorae, baskets, and sacks. The earth is a partner in every decision, where the threshing floor can catch wind, where a vine can shade a bench, where a shed can lend its shadow to a manger at noon. In the islands, houses turn white, square, and close-massed against the gusts, their walls thick as folded arms, their doors blue as deep water. Everywhere, the rule is the same: let the place teach you how to live. Walk the lane and the city reveals its bigger grammar. Temples lift their fluted syllables toward the gods, stowers stretch cool sentences along the agora, theaters curve like listening ears into the hill. Yet domestic architecture speaks in a quieter voice. Where temples model perfection for eternity, houses pursue adequacy for today. Their orders are the orders of timing: how heat arrives, when rain falls, who needs privacy and when. The miracle is that utility, pursued with attention, produces grace. A colonnade meant to shelter a loom becomes an elegant shadow. A drain meant to carry away water becomes a ribbon of sound. Inside, the furniture is precise and few. Stools of turned legs, a chair with a high back for the master or for honored age, a low table that comes and goes as meals demand. Chests hold linens and keepsakes, pegs on walls hold everything else. In the corner, a small altar, Hestia's or Zeus Ctesios, keeps company with a lamp and a bowl for libations. The sacred is not walled off, it shares the day's errands. Each morning a pinch of barley or a drop of wine, each evening a brief flame. Architecture here is also choreography, where your body turns to greet, to eat, to rest, to remember. Construction is labor and knowledge married. The mason knows how wide a foundation must be to carry a wall that will stand through 5 winters of rain. The carpenter knows the sound of a beam that will not warp in the 3rd summer. The potter provides tiles interlocking like scales, the plasterer spreads lime to the thickness of a thumb and smooths it to a surface that will take light like a calm pond. A house rises not only from materials but from agreements: a neighbor lends a ladder, a cousin brings straw, the gods receive first charity of the day's water. When the door is finally hung, it is a hinge for a community as much as for a room. Listen for water. Beneath the courtyard, a cistern receives the season's gift, fed by channels cut slyly into slope and threshold. The mouth is lined in tile, the interior sealed with a layer of waterproof mortar whose recipe is half chemistry and half inherited rumor. A rope over a roller, a bucket with a lip that pours without dribble, these are technologies as refined as any. In cities fortunate enough to manage them, clay pipes keep street mud from becoming street stream, grates catch what they can and accept the limits of their net. Cleanliness is collective, and architecture is how a city keeps its promises to itself. Even the thresholds are talkative. Stepstones are set so that sandals can find their logic without thought. Sills are slightly raised to keep honest rain from entering as an uninvited guest. The pivot of the door spins in a stone socket, smoothed to a satin feel by years of turning. The lintel carries more than weight, it carries wards. Over it hangs a sprig, olive, laurel, or a thread-wrapped charm that says this house is not only matter but attention. At night, the house becomes a planetarium of small lights. Lamps wake in niches and on shelves, their flames spooned by little pools of oil. Shadows ally themselves with beams, furniture, and the edge of a jar. The courtyard holds a cold square of sky studded with points that travel a little each hour. From the Unwind comes laughter that knows when to stop, from the women's quarter a loom clicks, then rests. The architecture edits sound the way a good writer edits words, cutting the sharp edges, amplifying the necessary, keeping the undertone of safety. There are variations and exceptions. In the wealthy districts, a doorway might swell into a modest vestibule where guests can shed dust and take measure of decorum. In a house devoted to craft, the street wall might flower into a workshop door wide enough to invite a customer's glance at a potter's wheel or a bronzesmith's glowing mouth of furnace. Limestone replaces mudbrake where quarrying is near, timber grows more generous where forests stand closer to town. Colonies on far shores adapt the mother city's habits to new winds and different soils, and still the family resemblance holds: courtyard, shade, small windows, attention to orientation, a preference for proportion over display. Children learn architecture with their feet. They count steps between rooms, map coolness and warmth with their skin, remember where the plaster bears a coin-sized stain shaped like Daphne's leaf. They will recall the exact creak of the stair that must be avoided after curfew. They will inherit the trick of bracing a wooden shutter with a loop of cord so it doesn't clap in a west wind. When they leave, they will build, with money or with words, some version of this house wherever they go. And like all living things, houses age. Plaster cracks along the line a beam suggested to it years ago. Tiles slip and are nudged back into place. A door sags as summers accumulate, a new hinge corrects the posture. Each repair is a conversation across time, a mason speaking to the hands that first set the stone, a granddaughter thanking the ancestor who chose a site where winter light could enter. When at last a house is abandoned, its walls do not collapse at once. They become a kind of landscape, rooms without roofs, thresholds without doors, visited by herbs, lizards, and the memory of voices that once braided themselves through its shade. What, then, is Greek domestic architecture? Not a style pinned like a specimen, but a practice. It is attention made timber and clay, climate translated into colonnade, habit held in the curve of a stair and the height of a sill. It is a grammar of enough light, enough air, enough privacy, enough kindness to the body at noon and at midnight. It is the engineering of belonging, a place that gathers a family, shelters labor, receives guests, makes room for the sacred, and edits the day into livable lines. To live in such a house is to accept the invitation to notice how shade moves, how tile cools the palm, how the city sounds softer after the bar is set in its sockets. In this chapter of our story, we find the architecture not only in stone and timber, but in the choreography of care that makes a house a home. Chapter 3. Food and Dining. Allow your senses to be caressed by the soft, lingering aroma of freshly baked bread and the muted tang of olive oil, a prelude to the ancient Greek culinary experience. In this realm, meals were not extravagant feasts but simple celebrations of sustenance and community. The daily diet was a careful blend of locally sourced grains, vegetables, fruits, and the occasional taste of fresh fish from the clear Aegean waters. In the quiet hours of the morning, a light breakfast, akrotisma, makes its modest entrance. Imagine a slice of barley bread dipped in watered wine, with a few olives or a small piece of cheese to awaken the palate. The bread, maza, is not a showpiece but a companion, made from barley ground in a household quern, its coarse sweetness speaking of fields and labor. Beside it, a clay cup offers wine softened with water, because to drink unmixed is to court excess, and the Greek day values measure. The kitchen is not a separate empire of gleaming metal but a hearth, a brazier, an earthen pot, a tripod of iron where a pot can hang and turn. Morning begins with embers coaxed to life, a pinch of salt that glints like crushed seashell on the palm, and a thin ribbon of oil that shines briefly before surrendering to heat. Garlic is pounded with a few leaves of rue in a stone mortar, thyme and oregano wait on a shallow dish, their fragrance hovering like a promise. A handful of barley grits becomes tisane, a porridge that takes kindly to honey, or to a spoon of goat's milk skimmed from the surface of a pail still warm from the animal. Akritisma is eaten quickly, standing near the doorway, the world still soft at the edges. Hands are rinsed with water poured from a small jug into a basin, and a few crumbs are given to the household gods. Then the lane calls, and the city stirs. In the agora the day's provisions unfold like a conversation. Fishmongers sing the virtues of their catch, silver-scaled and bright-eyed on beds of seaweed. A farmer's stall is a choir of greens, leeks, onions, cabbage, bitter chicory, and tender shoots of fennel. There are baskets of figs puckered with sweetness, grapes still dusty with bloom, walnuts and almonds in their tight shells, and clay jars of olives black and green, glistening in their brine. Buying is ritual as much as exchange. A housewife or steward tests a cheese with a thumb, feeling for the spring that promises flavor. A merchant breaks a fig and shows its crimson heart to prove sincerity. Weights are checked, prices counted with a small smile, and gossip crosses with the coin. The olive oil vendor draws a measure from an amphora, amber as late afternoon, and lets it thread into a flask, the smell filling the air with a memory of hills and cicadas. Ari's ton, the midday meal, is measured to the work at hand. Perhaps it is nothing more than yesterday's bread refreshed with water and a lick of oil, a few olives, a slice of cheese, and a pear, its skin mottled gold. On other days a clay pot murmurs on the hearth with a stew of lentils, onions, and a leaf or two of bay. The taste is honest. Legumes are the sturdy friends of the Greek table, lentils, chickpeas, broad beans, providing strength to those who labor and a gentle comfort when the day presses too hard. Vinegar brightens, cumin and coriander drift in the steam, and a pinch of salt makes the whole speak more clearly. The Greek meal divides itself between the staple, cetos, and the relish, opson. Bread or barley porridge anchors the appetite. Vegetables, fish, cheese, and herbs are the relishes that bring variety. To love opson too much, opsophagia, is a joke with an edge, a reminder that appetite should be guided, not obeyed. There is humor in restraint, and wisdom in a table that gives pleasure without boasting. Fish is the season's perfection when fortune allows it. A small red mullet dusted with salt, an anchovy grilled on a skewer over charcoal, a slice of tuna seared and dashed with vinegar and oregano. The sea is close, but money and weather stand between the market and the kitchen. Most days, salted fish or tiny sprats carry the memory of waves inland. Meat is rarer. Goat or mutton appears at festivals and family rites, roasted over a spit, its crackle and scent drawing neighbors to doorways. Pork is for certain households and certain days. Beef is the language of sacrifice at great festivals, carved into shares after the gods receive their portion. Cooking is a choreography of small tools that fit the hand, the olive wood spoon polished to a satin by 1,000 stirrings, the mortar that remembers every herb ever introduced to it, the clay pot whose rim bears a permanent smile of glaze where contents kissed as they simmered. A brazier glows like a quiet star in the corner, a portable clay oven leans against the courtyard wall, its domed belly blackened, ready for flatbread slapped to its interior and peeled away with a quick twist of the wrist. The air in the kitchen is a palimpsest of aromas, smoke, thyme, goat's milk, honey, that teach the skin to recognize home. As evening gathers, Deipnon calls the household to the low table in the courtyard. The first act is not eating but honoring. A libation, a few drops of wine poured to Hestia or Zeus Ctesios, acknowledges the invisible company of the home. Hands are washed, the water darkening a patch of stone, bread is broken and passed, not sliced. The youngest carries a basket of herbs, bay, thyme, maybe a sprig of mint, and sets it near the dish where olives shine in their bowl. Conversation loosens but does not spill, the day is weighed, not recounted. Tonight's table is typical and generous in its plainness. There is a lentil stew deepened with onions and a drift of coriander. There are boiled greens finished with oil and lemon's cousin, a bright note from the island trade of citrons and sour grape must. There is a dish of salted fish, softened in water and dressed with garlic, vinegar, and oil. A slab of white cheese lies on a wooden board, its crumb ready to give. Figs split and drizzled with honey anchor the meal's sweet conclusion. Wine is mixed in a crater, 3 parts water to 1 of wine, and ladled into kailikis that flash a pattern at the bottom when lifted. To drink unmixed wine is to behave like a Scythian, the elders joke, and everyone smiles at the idea of barbarian excess kept outside the walls by the simple courtesy of water. The ratio is a quiet doctrine of the table, pleasure tempered by clarity. A kylix passes, and a brief toast to the health of a cousin, the safe return of a ship, the favor of Demeter in the coming sowing. The children sit on stools, the men in their work tunics, the women, their hair unpinned for the evening, share bread and tasks, moving between kitchen and table like a tide. Elsewhere, on nights when guests are honored, the Andron receives a symposium. Low couches line the walls, and the door is brushed with garland. After a Deichmann much like the families, wine and conversation take the stage. The symposiarch, cup in hand, sets the dilution and the pace. Music arrives on the breath of an orlos, and poetry crosses the room from memory to ear. Kailikis rise and tilt, the crater's ladle dips and gleams. Tales of heroes balance jokes about neighbors, questions of virtue and policy mingle with gossip about a new potter's glaze. A game of kotabos may send a drop of wine arcing toward a target with a flick of the wrist, laughter following flight. In such rooms, the city practices the art of thinking together, warmed by wine that never quite lets anyone forget the presence of water. Wealth and poverty make their marks upon the table without erasing its basic grammar. In the houses of the well-to-do, wheat bread appears more often, a platter of roasted fowl visits with some regularity, a jar contains spices from afar, sesame, maybe pepper brought along old roots in tiny quantities. In humbler homes, barley's nutty strength anchors every day, and vegetables change with the season, broad beans in spring, cucumbers and purslane in summer, cabbages and beets when the air turns sharp. Everywhere, oil dresses, wine accompanies, and honey concludes. Honey is Greece's oldest sweetness, a geography of flowers made edible. In a small household, it is kept in a clay jar with a lid that sticks. A spoon is dipped, a thread drawn over cheese or bread, over nuts or fruit. Sometimes a cake, placus, appears, a simple marriage of flour, cheese, and honey baked until its edges remember the fire and its middle remembers milk. Children lick the spoon with a devotion usually reserved for gods, and no one objects. Desserts are not a separate course, only a permission. Storage is the hidden half of dining. Along a wall, pit hoy, tool storage jars, stand like silent watchers, their bellies full of grain, olives, or oil. Amphorae shoulder each other in the cool of the storeroom, each marked with a dab of pitch or a scratched sign to remember origin. In a corner, a basket of onions perfumes the air with promise, garlic hangs in braids like a curtain of moons. A slate tablet tallies the household's measures, marks of wax keeping company with scratches of charcoal. To eat well is to plan gently, to listen to season and store, to honor the work scattered across months in a single evening's ease. The garden outside the wall is modest and abundant. Rows of leeks and onions stand like careful handwriting. Between them, parsley and dill volunteer wherever they please, and mint attempts a small conquest near the drain. A vine slants along a trellis, its leaves currying favor with the sun. At the garden's edge, a fig holds an audience of wasps and children equally enchanted by its sweetness. The cook moves through this green place with a basket and a knife, snipping, gathering, blessing by selection. Even the act of eating is choreography. Bread is broken, dipped in oil, brushed across a plate to collect what remains of a dressing. Fingers meet olives and return the pits to a side dish with unconscious accuracy. A small bone is worried clean and set aside. A last spoon of stew is pressed toward the edge for a child who arrives late to the bowl. There is no hurry. The body relearns itself as a member of a household. I am fed and therefore I belong, I share and therefore I am seen. Feasts, when they come, amplify this grammar rather than changing it. At a wedding or a festival dedicated to Dionysus or Athena, fire plays a larger role in the day. A goat turns slowly on the spit, its fat hissing as it discovers the coals. Barley is scattered as a sign of blessing, and a wreath crowns the cook who minds the heat with the patience of a priest. There are songs, and a new jug of wine is opened with care. Everyone eats a little beyond hunger and speaks a little beyond shyness. These nights end with faces bright as lamps, and sleep comes quickly when the embers are tucked in. There are also days of restraint. Before a journey, during a vow, or in certain household sorrows, the table is simpler still: bread, water, a handful of olives, perhaps onions cut fine with oil and vinegar. The hunger is not punishment but attention. Food grows luminous again when absent, gratitude finds a sharper edge. To dine in ancient Greece is to be educated by modesty and flavor. The table is a school where season teaches, and memory takes notes in the tongue and in the hands. You learn the difference between hunger and appetite, between enough and plenty, between feasting and excess. You learn that a drizzle of oil can make green sing, that a pinch of cumin can turn a pot of lentils into a poem, that watered wine can keep a conversation gentle long after the lamps are lit. At the end of the meal, quiet returns like a friend who knows where to sit. Bowls are washed at the courtyard drain, their rims ringing lightly as they meet stone. Ashes are banked in the brazier, the lamp's wick is trimmed, a sprig of laurel is left in the small household shrine. The last slice of bread is wrapped and placed where morning will remember it. The moon finds the tiles, and the night resumes its study of the courtyard. Sleep gathers its tools. Somewhere a neighbor laughs softly, and a dog coughs once. The house breathes. The story of the day has been told in herbs and steam, in honey and wine, and the mouth carries its final line: tomorrow, again, together. Chapter 4. Clothing and Personal Care. Drift into the visual softness of ancient clothing, a wardrobe fashioned from natural fibers and imbued with both simplicity and quiet pride. In these times, garments were not merely worn, they were expressions of identity and social order. Men typically don tunics, known as chitons, which draped gently over strong forms, while women graced their bodies in peplos or chitons that were often embellished with subtle folds and artful dyeing. The fabrics, spun from wool or linen, carried a cool texture in the daytime and provided a soft warmth under starlight. In the morning, as light filtered into the private chambers of the home, family members engaged in their own delicate rituals of care. Women would anoint their skin with olive oil, a natural elixir that both softened and protected, and sometimes perfume it lightly with the sweet scents of wild flowers. Men, too, engaged in routine grooming, their hair combed meticulously and their simple garments cleaned with care, reflecting the respect they held for themselves and for those around them. The act of dressing was slow and meditative. Each fold, each pin, and even the adjustment of a simple belt was performed with a quiet mindfulness. The clothing of ancient Greece was never ostentatious, rather, it was a tribute to the harmony found in functionality and understated beauty. Shades of natural dyes, soft beiges, deep ambers, muted blues, melded seamlessly with the earthy palette of everyday life, evoking the landscape that cradled each home. At the loom, the story of clothing begins. In the women's quarters, threads hum across a vertical warp as a shuttle slips and returns. Wool from the family's flock is washed, carded, spun on the drop spindle, then woven into cloth that remembers the rhythm of hands. Linen, drawn from the stubborn grace of flax, dries like paper in the shade, then softens with wear. In each bolt of cloth lives a season of work, a domestic art that keeps pace with the calendar. A chiton, when it is finally cut and folded, asks only for pins and a belt to teach its shape. The peplos, an older style, wraps the body with a folded-over fold, the apoptygma, creating a gracious line across the chest. A himation, the great cloak, completes the vocabulary. Wrapped and draped, it adds gravity for elders, warmth for evening, and a decent curtain for thought. For travel and the hunt, the shorter chlamys frees the leg, pinned at the shoulder with a flash of metal. Clothes speak quietly of station and occasion. A plain, undyed wool for workday, a finer linen for public days in the agora, a deeper hue reserved for festivals. Dyes do not shout, they converse, yellow from saffron, soft red from madder, blues coaxed from woad. Patterns are modest, bands at the hem, meanders at the edge, a border that holds the garment like a sentence held by punctuation. Morning grooming uses tools that fit the hand the way words fit a thought. A bone comb wakes the hair and smooths it into order. A small bronze mirror, polished to a calm, not a glare, answers the face with enough truth to be useful and enough kindness to be bearable. The araballos or alabastron, tiny vessels of perfumed oil, leave discreet brightness at the wrist and behind the ear. Olive oil is the skin's companion. In the gymnasium, men rub down, dusting with fine sand for grip, then scrape clean with the strigil, a curved blade that removes oil and dust together. At home, a gentler ritual, a palmful of oil smoothed across forearms and neck, the skin drinking what the tree has stored. Scent mirrors the hour, rosemary for morning vigor, iris or marjoram for the evening's softer edge. Hair is a field of fashion and meaning. Children wear it long, then dedicate a lock at coming of age. Men favor short practical cuts or tie it back with a simple fillet when work demands it. Women braid, coil, or cover with a sakos or veil when ceremony, weather, or modesty suggests restraint. Pins, peronai, secure cloth, and sometimes opinion, jewelry speaks in glints rather than speeches. Footwear treads the line between earth and decorum. Bare feet know the cool blessing of stone, but sandals of leather, lace simply, shield the sole from heat and roughness. For travel or harvest, sturdier soles meet thorn and field, in the andron, clean feet respect the couch. Shoes enter the story without insisting on it, the ground remembers them better than the eye does. Children are dressed in kindness first and cloth second. A short chiton allows running and mischief, a little cloak appears when winds grow particular. Youths at the palestra smell of oil and effort, their garments slung on pegs while trainers shout measures of grace. Girls learn the weights of cloth and expectation at the loom, their dolls wearing miniature peploi that practice future skill. The year's weather teaches the wardrobe its grammar. In summer, linen chitons breathe easily, the himation rarely needed except at night. Autumn sharpens the air, a heavier weave enters the rotation. Winter calls for layered wool, the cloak pulled higher against a north wind's argument. In spring, dyes arrive like restrained blossoms, nothing so loud as to argue with the countryside, everything in conversation with it. Out in the public baths or within private courtyards, bathing is as much listening as it is washing. Water poured from a clay jug arcs like a brief poem over shoulder and back. Soap is rare, ash, clay, and oil do the work of cleansing, scrubbing away dust and thought's heaviness. The towel is coarse enough to remind the skin of itself and soft enough to let the day continue without complaint. Cosmetics are a careful art of enhancement, not disguise. A touch of color to lips, a darkening at the lash line drawn from soot or mineral, a dusting of powder to temper the sun's record, all within the bounds of modesty taught by mothers and neighbors. The goal is not to become someone else, but to greet one's own face as a friend. Jewelry is the wardrobe's punctuation. A bronze bracelet holds a sleeve suggestion. A beadwork necklace carries the smell of resin and the memory of markets. Earrings catch lamplight in the andron, a ring receives a covenant at a family rite. Metal and stone do not shout, they answer light with a small, steady grammar. Barbershops are little theaters of news. A stool, a razor, a basin, and a man with steady hands, these are the props. Hair is trimmed, beard shaped, opinions exchanged. Philosophers argue the length of a beard as if it were a footnote to ethics, merchants pretend not to listen and absorb everything. The razor's last pass leaves the cheek in treaty with the air. Cloth care is quiet labor. Garments are shaken against dust, aired along shaded walls, and spot cleaned with clay or diluted vinegar. A tear is addressed before it becomes a story of neglect, a seam is reinforced where strain tells a future. In wealthier homes, a fuller might rework a treasured piece, but most houses rely on diligence, not replacement. Festivals stretch the wardrobe toward ceremony. Wreaths of myrtle or ivy crown hair, himatia, are arranged with extra gravity, a border of color that lived folded away comes into the light. On days of mourning, brightness steps back, cloth darkens, pins are plain. Clothing listens to the calendar and learns its manners. Work teaches its own silhouettes. A farmer binds his chiton short for threshing, a potter leaves his right shoulder bare for reach, a fisher drapes a simple wrap that dries quickly in the sun. A hoplite's kit is another chapter entirely, bronze and leather, linen corselet, greaves, but even he knows the comfort of a clean chiton when the shield is set down. Travel revises drape and kit. The petisso's broad-brimmed hat throws shade like a traveling tree. The chlamys hugs the shoulders, a pouch at the belt holds a knife, a coin, a sprig of luck. Dust marks the hem honestly, the first act in a new town is a wash and a rearrangement of cloth that says, I am here respectfully. Religious rites call forth specific garments and gestures. At a sacrifice, the himation wraps tighter, the hands are clean, the hair bound. At a wedding, white linen reflects promises, at a coming of age, the first beard or the first veil tells a public story of private time. Clothing becomes language that even the gods are expected to read. In portraits and on painted vases, the ideal of drapery is codified. Painters teach cloth to behave like water and thought at once, pooling at the waist, cascading at the knee, catching wind without embarrassment. The real garments of daily life fall more simply, but the aspiration in art returns to the body as a suggestion: carry yourself as if a painter were watching. Evening gathers, and with it the closing rituals of care. Hair is unbound and combed, oil lifts the day's dust and is wiped away, a clean chiton replaces the one that did the labor. The cloak becomes a blanket for a brief conversation under stars. In the lamplight, pins find their dish, combs their place, and the mirror's bronze face cools. The body thanks the day, and the wardrobe goes quiet until morning. To dress and tend the self in ancient Greece is to participate in a discipline of ease. Cloth, oil, comb, and pin, tools of modesty and expression, compose a daily liturgy that keeps the person in tune with season, city, and household. Nothing is wasted, nothing is careless. Beauty is not a costume but a habit that teaches the body where it belongs, here, now, among others, with respect. Chapter 5. Work and Professions. As the day awakens fully in the light of the Aegean, the rhythm of work commences, a carefully orchestrated cadence in which every individual has a role. In the fields, the sound of ploughs turning the soft earth is joined by the murmur of farmers who, with quiet determination, tend to olive trees, vineyards, and grain fields. Their labors, though humble, are infused with the steady pulse of seasonal change. Work lives on a calendar the body can read. Winter prunes vines back to the promise of spring, spring breaks clods and sets barley in the furrows, summer watches olive swell and wheat heads amber, autumn bends backs to harvest and presses fruit into oil and grape into must. The seasons do not shout, they tap the shoulder and say, now. Tools are the hand's long memory. A wooden oar plough parts the soil like a careful sentence, the mattock corrects what the plough suggests. A sickle sings close to the ground. On a wall, a woven basket waits for figs, beside the door, a yoke smooth with sweat remembers yesterday's path to the field and promises tomorrow's. Artisans and craftsmen contribute to the city's second heartbeat. A potter sits at his wheel, left foot nursing a rhythm while hands convince the clay to rise and bow. The vessel's curve is a practiced argument between water and earth mediated by patience. Nearby, a rack of greenware dries in the shade, handles sprouting like ears ready to listen. At the kiln, fire is a colleague with conditions. Pots are stacked with spaces for breath, slips and glazes whisper of iron and ash. The kiln's mouth is bricked and sealed, vents teased open and shut by a potter who reads smoke as if it were script. When the door breaks open at dawn, new terracotta cools like the skin of bread. A good firing is a feast, a bad one is a lesson you pay for with humility. Metal answers the hammer with truth. In the smithy, a brazier breathes, iron glows to a color that has learned to speak. The blacksmith's arm knows the interval between heat and shape, the quench's hiss, the music of small corrections. Nails, hinges, knives, and plowshares, the alphabet of town and farm. The smallest tool may have the longest echo. Carpenters hear timber the way sailors hear wind. A straight-grained beam discloses its intentions under the adze. Pegs and joinery knit without nails where a wall needs to breathe and move. A door is hung to swing without complaint, a chest accepts a lid that settles like a thought finishing a sentence. Stone remembers longer. In the quarry, wedges bite into drilled holes, a seam gives with a sigh that seems ancient as thunder. Masons coax blocks into plumb and bond, a string and a lead weight mark the world into lines a wall can respect. The mason's eye is patient, a face dressed true can last beyond the grandson's grandson. Sculptors and painters lend form to ideas. Marble offers a sleeping figure, the chisel wakes it grain by grain. On vases, painters draw men and women in quiet action, pouring a libation, stringing a lyre, lifting a jar, with lines so sure they persuade clay to remember motion. Craft is a way of making time visible. Textiles are the household's soft economy. In the gyneconitis, a loom stands like a window that opens onto patience. Wool is washed, carded, spun to thread, flax is coaxed to linen. Weft crosses warp in a discipline that feels like music. Dyes from madder, saffron, and woad lend restrained color. Each garment contains a season's worth of hands. Leather work is honest and aromatic. A tanner's yard sits downwind by design. Hides soak, scrape, and soften into usefulness. Straps, sandals, and pouches depart with a smell the city recognizes as necessity. The sandal maker fits a foot the way a scribe fits a line of verse, measuring without fuss, aiming at a comfort that goes unnoticed when it is perfect. Ships are the city's gamble on distance. In the shipyard, frames rise like ribs remembering a great fish. Carpenters steam planks to curve, pitch seal seams with the faith of a priest. A mast is stepped, cordage hums in wind even on land. When the hull first meets water, the crowd's breath joins the seas as if the city had grown a new limb. On the water, work braids with weather. Fishermen study the skin of waves for a change in texture that means schooling fish below. Nets are mended at dusk, fingers finding breaks the way tongues find a tooth's sharp edge. Dawn brings a spill of silver into boats and a quick prayer that tomorrow will remember today's generosity. The agora is where hands turn into measures. Stalls set out olives, figs, and coils of fresh cheese. A merchant's weights and scales keep trust visible. A moneychanger's table holds a tidy geometry of coins, their faces offer cities and gods, their edges the measure of value and promise. Haggling is a polite sport with rules everyone knows. Trade is also movement. Donkeys take narrow streets like they remember them from a previous life. Porters balance loads that look like buildings learning to walk. In the stower's shade, contracts are witnessed, names on wax or memory's ledger, and a handshake binds the story that will feed a family. Learning makes its own profession. A teacher in a shaded room speaks letters into a set of new ears, a boy repeats alpha, beta, gamma until the shapes hold still. A music master counts time with a finger against his knee, a wrestling trainer finds the border between strength and injury. Practice is a craft that makes craftsmen of the next generation. The city's health rests in many hands. A midwife knows the weight of breath in a newborn's chest and the flavor of broths that persuade milk to flow. A physician travels with a kit of blades and bandages, herbs and hopes. He listens to the pulse at the wrist like a message from a distant friend. Water carriers keep the corners civilized, sweepers edit the streets. Public service is also labor. A herald's voice stitches the city together with announcements, a scribe's hand records fines, votes, and property lines onto wax or papyrus. Magistrates sit with seriousness and a tolerance for dust. Priests and priestesses oversee rites with a steadiness that keeps fear from borrowing the day. Soldiers are craftsmen of danger. In the practice yard, shields meet like distant thunder, spear points draw straight lines in air. The armor is an argument between weight and protection. A hoplite learns his neighbor's breath, the formation's craft is trust. When the shield wall holds, it is also a kind of architecture. Not all labor is chosen. Slaves carry water, turn mills, tend children, and stand at shop counters under the eye of a master who counts profit by the quarter day. Their lives are threads in the fabric of the city, often unacknowledged, always present. Freedom, when it comes, is a new verb that needs careful conjugation. Metics, resident foreigners, thread the economy with skills the city did not grow itself. A Levantine trader knows ship routes like a shepherd knows paths, a Sicilian potter brings a kill trick that reduces waste by a tenth. The city is a mirror that gets brighter when it accepts other light. The workday has a choreography. Dawn begins loud, noon retreats into shade and slower movements, evening returns with accounting and repairs. Tools are hung where hands will find them tomorrow. A lamp's wick is trimmed, the shop's door bar slides into its sockets with a sound everyone recognizes as rest. What binds these professions is techne, the practiced knowledge of how. Whether shaping a pot, a law, a net, or a song, the city's survival depends on people who show up and perfect a small corner of the world. Work is not spectacle here, it is a steady beauty that leaves calluses where pride can take root without boasting. Chapter 6. Education and Schooling. Deep in the midst of quiet routines there is the steady pursuit of knowledge, a calm thread that moves through the days of ancient Greece. In houses where the shutters soften the light and in courtyards where the air is still, children grow toward understanding with small steps, careful steps, and patient repetition. For boys the course is guided by teachers and by habit, by words learned slowly and movements practiced with care, mind and body kept together in a gentle balance. Learning is not hurried, it is almost like breathing, one phrase followed by another, one exercise followed by rest, until the sense of things settles into place. In early childhood the first lessons begin at home, where a mother, a nurse, an older relative speak clearly and softly, shaping the tongue and the ear before letters are ever seen. A child hears names for bread and for water, for the door and the hearth, and that simple vocabulary becomes a map of the house and of the day. There are songs that are repeated at bedtime, there are stories told near the brazier in the evening, there are little reminders about kindness, fairness, and obedience, and these are all lessons, gentle and constant, that teach the heart before the hand takes up a stylus. When a boy is old enough to begin formal learning he is led through the streets by a watchful attendant, the pedagogos, a quiet guardian who keeps a steady pace and a steady eye. The city is waking while they walk, shopkeepers lift shutters, the smell of bread drifts from ovens, and the stones of the street hold the cool of dawn. The schoolroom is small, with low benches and a simple chair for the teacher, and there is a basket for tablets, a small jar for ink, and a place where cloaks are left. The boy sits, the attendant stands by the door, and the lesson starts with calm familiarity. First there is the alphabet, the line of letters spoken and then sung, each sound shaped carefully, each symbol traced again and again. A wax tablet lies smooth and ready, the stylus presses and lifts, and the marks shine a little in the light. Uppercase forms are learned with patience, then smaller forms, and the hand begins to remember what the eye commands. Mistakes are smoothed away with the flat of the stylus, the surface is made new, and the boy tries again, not rushed, not anxious, just steady and attentive, until the letters come quietly and without effort. From letters the lesson moves to words, and from words to sentences, and then to lines from the poets who are known by everyone. Homer is a companion in this room, His verses walked slowly, the rhythm counted gently on the fingers, the sense explained in simple terms. The teacher reads a line, the boy repeats it, the teacher asks a question, the boy answers if he can, and if he cannot he listens once more. The language opens a little more each day, and the habit of recitation begins to build memory, like a wall of stones set one on another, each one placed with care. Numbers have a similar calm progression, with pebbles set in neat rows upon a board, the abacus, so that the idea of counting is not a strain but a visible pattern. 2s become 4s, 5s become 10s, and the hand moves the pebbles in slow, certain motions that show what is being thought. There are simple problems about buying and selling, about measures of grain and measures of oil, and the schoolroom holds the hush of concentration, the light scrape of stone on wood, and the sound of a teacher's voice speaking evenly about sums and parts and wholes. Music is learned with the same unhurried spirit, for the Greeks believe that character is shaped by sound as well as by thought. A lyre is tuned, strings are tested, and a melody is traced one note at a time until it becomes familiar. The boy learns to sing a simple hymn, he learns to hold a tone, he learns to feel the rhythm in his chest and in his step. The teacher speaks quietly about moderation, about harmony, about the way a mode can soothe or stir, and the lesson moves in a circle of listening, trying, and listening again, until the song rests gently in the mind. Physical training has its own place in the day, for the body is not forgotten. In the palaestra there is stretching and slow running, there are exercises that empty the restlessness from the limbs and replace it with calm strength. Wrestling is practiced in the sand with rules and with courtesy, and after the work there is oil for the skin and a strigil to draw away the dust. Breath is quieted, posture is corrected, and there is a sense that order enters the body and steadies it, so that speech will later be steady, and thoughts will later stand upright. The art of speaking grows by degrees, almost without the boy noticing that he is now shaping argument as well as sound. Simple maxims are memorized, short fables are retold, and there are questions about what is fitting or what is just. The teacher reminds the class to look at the listener, to let the hands rest, to keep the voice level and clear. There is no rushing toward victory in debate. There is instead a careful setting out of points and a careful listening to replies, so that the habit of measured talk becomes natural and calm. In Athens the school is modest, sometimes the tuition is modest too, collected in coins that clink softly into a small box by the door. The room is plain, the tools are few, the expectations are steady and known. The day begins early and ends before the heat is greatest, and on festival days the school is closed, for the city has its own calendar, and learning belongs to the city as much as to the family. A father may visit when there is time, standing a moment to hear a recitation, nodding once, and leaving as quietly as he came. Books are rare and precious, and so the practice of copying becomes a slow craft that trains the eye and the hand together. Papyrus scrolls are not common in every school, so a boy learns from the teacher's voice, and he writes on wax that he wipes smooth again and again, and sometimes on a shard of pottery when a note must be kept. The reed pen scratches softly when ink is used, and the letters form with care, straight and even. A good hand is admired, not for ornament but for order, because order is a sign of attention, and attention is the beginning of wisdom. The life of the city provides lessons of its own, and so the schoolroom and the street support one another without any strain. Stories about gods and heroes are not only entertainment, they are also a guide for conduct, and the laws written on public boards are not only commands, they are also instruction. At the festival of Dionysus the theatre offers tales that move the heart and steady the judgment, and when a boy joins a chorus under a leader's careful hand he learns rhythm and discipline together. Education expands and draws breath in these public places, and then it returns to the quiet of the room. Girls learn in ways that are closer to home, and their lessons are not always written in ink, yet they are not trivial or thin. A mother shows how to spin and to weave, how to keep accounts for the household, how to read a short message when one is sent, and how to sing the songs that are suited to the season and to the gods. There are instructions about courtesy, there are instructions about generosity, there are instructions about restraint, and these are repeated in a calm voice that never tires of repeating them. The education is steady and consistent, and its measure is the order of the home itself. In Sparta the rhythm is firmer, because the training of boys is ordered by the city rather than by the household, and endurance is praised more than softness. There is reading, there is writing, there is song, yet the shape of the day is different, and the lessons of hardship are considered lessons of character. Girls there run and throw and sing in public choruses, their bodies trained for strength and health, and the community approves of this discipline. Even with these differences, there is the same confidence that habit forms the mind, and that repeated practice brings quiet mastery. When a youth in Athens reaches the age of 18, he enters a new period of ordered life, the ephebic training that leads towards citizenship. There are oaths spoken in the presence of elders, there are drills that teach careful movement, there are watches kept at the edges of the region where the sea and the land meet. The young men learn to speak before the assembly with respect, they learn to listen to the older voices without haste, and they learn that service to the city is not a matter of noise but of constancy. The transition from student to citizen is gradual, and it is guided by routine more than by excitement. Teachers hold quiet authority in this world, each with a task that is understood. The grammatist teaches letters and reading, the kitharist teaches music and song, the paido-tribes guides exercises and games, and later a respected speaker or philosopher may shape the art of reasoning. Fees are set in ways that families can manage, reputations travel by word of mouth, and a good teacher is prized for steadiness more than for brilliance. There are strict men, there are gentle men, there are those who demand many lines, and those who prefer questions, yet all of them move the students along a path that is familiar. Evenings are for review, for lamplight, for the quiet scratch of a stylus and the gentle rustle of a papyrus sheet when a father has been able to bring one home. A boy repeats a line until it holds in the mouth without effort, he copies a proverb until it looks neat without thought, he works a small problem in numbers until the answer appears almost of its own accord. Outside the air cools, the courtyard grows still, the house grows still, and the lesson closes when the eyes grow heavy. The next day will return to the same points, not because the mind is slow, but because repetition is a calm road toward certainty. The season shapes study without hurry, for planting and harvest draw some boys away for a time, and religious observances reshape the week, and the teacher adjusts as needed. When the weather is mild, the room is open to the air, and when the heat grows strong, the class meets earlier, and when rain falls, there is patience and there are shorter tasks. The school belongs to the rhythm of life rather than standing apart from it, and that belonging keeps it simple and durable. A year passes like this, and then another, and then another, and understanding grows like a tree grows, a little more each season. In the end, the picture is not grand, it is quiet, and it is made up of small scenes that repeat until they become secure. A hand holding a stylus over a wax tablet, a voice reciting a measured line, a step that lands evenly in the dust of the yard, a head that bows for a moment in thought, these are the marks of learning. From first letters to speeches given with calm confidence, from first sums to accounts kept with care, the path does not leap, it progresses in steady measure. The mind finds a home for knowledge, and the heart finds a habit of order, and the life of the city receives both with gratitude. Chapter 7. Trade in the Agora. Step outside the humble doorways and into the gentle bustle of the Agora, a broad and open space set like a quiet heart within the city. Stoa roofs throw even shade in long lines, flagstones warm slowly, and vendors begin to arrange their goods in patient order. Voices are soft at first, greetings pass between neighbors, the day stretches ahead with a measured rhythm that invites unhurried steps and steady observation. The marketplace is not crowded with noise, it is composed of low conversations and careful movement. Baskets are set down with care, cords are untied with a slow hand, cloth is folded and refolded until it lies neat and ready. A boy sweeps dust into a small pile, a woman adjusts an awning to soften the light, and a porter settles his load beside a column to rest his shoulders. The space awakens without hurry, and the work of trade begins to take shape. Tables show simple goods that belong to daily life, small ceramic cups with modest glaze, plain bowls for bread, jars for oil, and little lamps resting in rows. There are textiles folded into squares, undyed wool in soft heaps, and woven belts set like narrow rivers of color. Herbs give off a quiet scent, bay and thyme and fennel, and a bundle of dried figs sits beside a scale whose pans hang evenly. Nothing presses, everything waits for a calm decision. From early light to mid-morning the stream of people grows, not in haste but in continuity. A farmer from the hills brings olives in a wicker crate, a fisherman shows a catch that still holds a hint of the sea, a potter arrives with a fresh stack of cups wrapped in straw. Those who come to buy touch the rim of a bowl, lift a handle to feel its weight, and ask simple questions about price and quality. The seller answers without hurry, and the exchange is made with a quiet nod. Under the shelter of the stoa, where columns stand like a row of patient trees, men pause to hear news and to speak of small matters. A notice board shows writing in a steady hand, a scribe bends over a wax tablet, a messenger leans his staff against a wall and waits for the next instruction. The stoa gathers shade and conversation, and that coolness allows the mind to move gently from purchase to thought. Weights and measures are kept nearby, official stones and metal weights stamped and plain, so that the scales balance fairly and trust remains untroubled. A market inspector passes without display, looks at a measure of grain, looks at a yard of cloth, and moves on. There is little need for severity when habit has already taught restraint, and there is comfort in knowing that the pan will settle level when a measure is properly filled. Coins pass from hand to hand with a soft sound, a small circle of silver that carries agreement from one person to another. A money changer sets neat stacks upon a table, drachmas and obols laid out with tidy care, and his balance is small but exact. A buyer places coins in a leather purse that rests lightly at the belt, and the purse is tied in a simple knot, nothing ostentatious, only the modest sign of means sufficient for the day. Olive oil is poured from amphorae with a steady hand, the stream golden and slow, and the scent rises with a warmth that seems to carry the sun within it. Bread is lifted from baskets lined with linen, the crust dark and the crumb pale, and small cheeses are wrapped in leaves to keep them cool. Wine is drawn by the ladle and tested with a sip, water to taste, and the cup returns to the lip with quiet approval. Along one side of the square, the potter has a table with pieces that feel familiar to the hand, a cup that fits the fingers, a small pitcher with a lip that pours without a drip. He speaks softly of the clay and the firing, of the kiln that cools through the night, of glazes that set to a calm shine. A buyer chooses 2 bowls, not because they are rare, but because they are sound and plain, ready to be useful without drawing attention. Across from him the smith has brought a few tools and fittings, not in a noise of hammer and anvil, but as finished work set for purchase. A hinge that turns smoothly, a small knife that holds an edge, a hook that will bear a modest weight with ease. The smith weighs a piece in his palm and says little, his work explains itself, and the buyer nods and pays, glad to hold something made with steady hands. Fish are arranged on broad leaves that glisten with a thin veil of water, their scales catching the light like a quiet signal. The fisherman touches a fin to show its firmness, moves a basket to make room for a later catch, and keeps a damp cloth ready to cover the display. Buyers look with a practical eye, thinking of the pan and the fire, of the herbs beside the door, and of the family that will sit together in the shade to share the meal. Spices and herbs form a small corner where color and scent mingle without insistence. Saffron threads lie like fine strands of evening light, cumin seeds rest in a clay bowl, and a bundle of mint brightens the air around it. The seller crushes a pinch between thumb and finger, lifts the hand so the buyer can breathe in the fragrance, and the bargain is made with a relaxed smile that speaks of mutual understanding. Textiles run like quiet water along a table, wool in natural hues beside a length of linen that has been washed to a gentle softness. A woman tests the cloth with a slow rub between finger and thumb, looking for even weave and honest strength. The merchant speaks of the shuttle and the loom in simple terms, of the time it takes for thread to become fabric, and the measure is taken with a stick marked by steady notches. The movement of goods depends on bodies that bear weight with care. Donkeys with calm eyes step evenly along the edge of the square, their packs secured by ropes that have learned the shape of their burden. Porters balance crates across padded shoulders, adjust with a small shift of the foot, and set things down as if placing them upon water, without a thud and without a complaint. The traffic is light and sensible, guided by habit more than by order shouted aloud. From the harbor the road brings more than people, it brings the quiet wealth of distance, amphorae marked with signs that tell of origin and contents, jars of oil, jars of wine, and sacks of grain that hold the plain power of nourishment. A carter lifts a hand in greeting as he passes, the wheels leave a faint track in the dust, and the crates are delivered to a stall where they will be opened in a methodical way. The city breathes through these arrivals, not with excitement, but with a deep and regular tide. Near a column a small group sits on low stools and speaks of prices and of routes, not in urgency but with patience, the talk of men who know the turns of the road and the temper of weather. They mark a few figures upon a tablet, then wipe it smooth with the flat end of the stylus, and begin again with clearer numbers. Contracts wait under the stoa where witnesses stand in the shade, and the business is concluded with a handshake that needs no flourish. The magistrate comes by with one companion and listens to a brief question about a boundary, answers in a steady tone, and moves away. A herald reads a notice in an even voice, and a pair of elders look upon him with habitual attentiveness. Public matters pass lightly through the marketplace, and the marketplace receives them without being disturbed, because the life of the city is made to fit together in an easy way. Some mornings a philosopher is found at the edge of the square, not far from a fountain where water falls with a soft sound. He speaks to a small circle about moderation, about friendship, about fairness in trade and in speech, and his argument travels at a walking pace, never ahead of the listener. People come and go from the circle as their errands allow, and the fountain continues to cool the air without ever asking for notice. Shops around the perimeter are little rooms with low thresholds and shelves that hold simple stock, cords, pins, small jars, sandals for the dusty road. The shopkeeper sits upon a stool and looks out at the square, rises when a familiar face pauses, and offers a few words that are more greeting than sales. A purchase is made, the coin is counted, the small door is closed gently, and the pattern of the day continues as it always has. At midday the light grows strong, awnings are drawn lower, and the pace of the agora adjusts to the heat. A cup of watered wine is taken in the shade, a piece of bread is broken and shared, and the conversation drops to a murmur that suits the hour. Work does not stop, it softens, and the afternoon will lift it again when the sun has passed its highest point. Children weave through the edges of the crowd with simple tasks in their hands, a message to carry, a loaf to fetch, a bundle of herbs to deliver to an aunt. They learn the routes and the faces, they learn the way a question is asked and the way an answer is given, and they learn to move with courtesy in a place where everyone meets. Their steps become part of the city's memory, repeated day after day until the pattern is secure. When a festival approaches, the square changes its arrangement in a careful way. Stalls are shifted, a space is kept open for a small procession, and the altar near the stoa is swept with special attention. Offerings appear in baskets that look ordinary but hold something more, a gesture of gratitude and a hope for luck. Trade pauses for a moment as the procession passes, then resumes without strain, as if the two activities have always shared the same ground. As the light lowers, the sellers begin to put things away, cloth returns to its fold, scales to their boxes, coins to their pouches, and the last customers make their choices without hurry. A porter carries a final crate to a door where the lamp has already been lit, and the shopkeeper lifts the bar into its brackets with a sound that marks the end of the day. The square remains warm for a little while, then the stones release their heat, and the evening air moves quietly between the columns. By night the agora holds its shape in memory more than in sight, the paths are known, the doors are counted without being seen, and the city sleeps with a calm that comes from tasks completed. In the morning the routines will return in the same sequence, and the market will open like a flower that closes and opens with the sun. Trade is not a storm, it is a tide, and the tide belongs to everyone who steps upon the stones and finds what they need with a peaceful heart. Chapter 8. Religion and Festivals. As the soft hues of twilight give way to the serene quiet of night, the gentle whispers of ancient rituals begin in earnest. In every household, love for the gods is woven into the fabric of daily existence. Imagine a modest altar where a family offers a quiet prayer, a small libation of wine poured in honor of Athena or Apollo, a silent invocation to the divine forces that govern life. Before the dawn, a mother tidies the hearth and sets aside a pinch of barley for the god of the doorway, and a father lights a small lamp and bows his head. The children stand close, learning by watching, while the house holds stillness like a shallow pool. Faith at home is soft and regular, the shape of piety learned by repetition rather than by argument. At the threshold small offerings are placed, sprigs of laurel or a few fresh figs, and a whispered hope for health and safe return. The courtyard carries the faint scent of olive oil and smoke, the air is calm, and even the neighbors' voices seem to respect the hour. Morning rises gently, and the day begins with the gods already acknowledged. Religious festivals punctuate the calendar with moments of joyful reverence. Even the most modest celebrations are imbued with solemn beauty, processions by candlelight, soft chants underscored by the faint hymn of a lyre, and communal feasts that blend austerity with heartfelt submission to the gods. Ceremonies are conducted with methodical care, every gesture a respectful tribute to traditions that span centuries, a reminder that faith, in its quiet persistence, offers solace and strength. In the streets a procession forms without hurry, girls bearing baskets with measured steps, men carrying branches wound with wool, and elders walking with staffs that tap lightly on stone. Incense rises in pale threads, and the crowd moves like a single body that breathes in long, even cycles. No one presses forward, everyone keeps the same gentle pace. At the temple gate the columns greet the morning with their own steady order. Priests prepare the altar with clean hands, attendants bring water for washing, and a small chorus rehearses a hymn where each note rests securely upon the next. The sacred space is not distant from life, it is the calm center of it, and those who enter do so with a composure that has been taught by generations. Sacrifice, when offered, is not a spectacle, it is a slow and careful sequence that honors both life and law. Grain is sprinkled, salt is cast, and a quiet prayer is spoken so that even the words seem to bow. The smoke that rises is not a scream, it is a sign, a gentle ascent that carries intention upward while the community stands in attentive silence. After the rite there is sharing, bread is broken, wine is poured, and meat is distributed in a measured way so that each person receives a fair portion. The feast is not loud, it is grateful, and children learn to pass plates with both hands and to thank the server with their eyes as well as with their voices. Gratitude settles like evening light over the gathering. Some festivals belong to particular gods and to particular places, and they give the city its distinct calendar. In Athens the Panathenea draws the community toward the Acropolis, and the weaving of the peplos becomes a quiet emblem of collective devotion. The steps are long and regular, the music is steady, and the gift is presented with care rather than with noise. Games and contests appear within these observances, yet even competition can be composed when it is wrapped in ritual. Runners finish with a balanced stride, wrestlers bow and embrace, and musicians end a performance with a stillness that extends the music into silence. The victor lifts a wreath with a humble motion, the loser nods once, and both understand that honor, like faith, thrives on measure. The small shrines along roadsides and in groves give the landscape a pattern of remembrance. Travelers pause to pour a drop of wine, to set a small garland, and to ask for safe passage. A stone with a simple carving can hold a whole region's habit of hope, so that even a solitary walker feels accompanied. Within the home the loom stands near the altar niche, and the work of weaving continues alongside the work of worship. Threads gather into cloth while prayers gather into days, and the two crafts steady the mind in similar ways. The gods are honored not only with words, but with honest work that turns effort into order. At the city fountain women meet in the cool of morning to draw water and to trade quiet blessings. A small statue nearby receives a wreath that has faded from green to gold, and a child learns to touch the base lightly with fingers that are still uncertain. Reverence grows by habit, and habit grows by community. Stories told in the evening return again and again to the gods, not with trembling fear, but with respectful familiarity. Around the brazier an old tale is repeated, how a god once guided a traveler or spared a field from ruin, and the listeners hear not only the plot but the steady tone in which it is told. Faith descends as much through voice as through doctrine. The theatre belongs to religion as well, and the festival of Dionysus opens a space for the city to breathe together. Tragedy and comedy move in deliberate arcs across the stage, and the chorus speaks for the many in measures that match the breath of the audience. The lessons are not shouted, they are walked, and they remain. In sanctuaries beyond the city the air is cooler and the trees stand as if listening. Pilgrims arrive with lamplight in the early hours, they wash, they wait, they enter, and they come away with a calm that does not announce itself. A small token is left behind, a clay figurine or a votive tablet, and in that object the story of a quiet request becomes part of the place. Divination is practiced with restraint, the reading of signs and the casting of lots carried out by hands that value decorum. The answer is received with acceptance rather than with excitement, and plans adjust by small degrees. In this way fate is met not by struggle, but by alignment. Priestesses and priests are known by their steadiness more than by their display. Their garments are simple, their movements measured, and their voices level. They belong to the community as servants of its memory, and they hold the boundary between the ordinary and the sacred without harshness. At the end of a festival day the streets quiet in a slow spiral, music falling away like a tide that has reached its mark. Banners are taken down and folded, torches are covered, and stone steps hold the warmth of the day a little longer. People walk home with an ease that comes from participation, the feeling of having been in a pattern larger than the self. Night returns, and the household altar receives one more small flame and one more small word. A girl places a flower in a shallow bowl, a boy sets the lamp aside, and a mother smooths the cloth that covers the niche. The light is lowered, the room grows dim, and the city sleeps in the company of its gods. Across the year these observances bind the days together, not as knots but as threads that run straight and true. The calendar is a quiet instrument that keeps time for the mind and for the hand, and the sacred returns like the seasons return. In this pattern the people find stability, and stability makes room for kindness. The gods are not distant stars, they are the names given to the moral weather that moves through the city: courage, wisdom, moderation, and justice finding form in stories and in rites. When a child bows before a small altar, the gesture is also a bow before these inward guides. In time the bow becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a character. So the city keeps faith in simple ways, with clear water, with clean hands, with measured words. The festivals rise and fall with gentle dignity, the shrines receive their garlands, and the temples stand without strain. In this quiet devotion a people learns how to stand together and how to sleep in peace. Chapter 9. Leisure and Entertainment. When the demands of work recede and the golden light of dusk settles over the land, leisure unfolds as a tender respite. In ancient Greece moments of entertainment are never boisterous, they are gentle interludes that stimulate the mind and soothe the spirit. The soft murmur of theatrical plays in open-air amphitheaters invites the listener to reflect on ancient tales of love and fate. Actors stand in measured posture, masks lifted toward the audience, and voices travel like calm waves across the rows of stone seats. The chorus moves together with deliberate steps, a single body of many feet, and the rhythm sets thoughts in order. Those who watch feel the pleasant weight of shared attention, a stillness that belongs to the whole city. Music joins the evening with unhurried tenderness, notes from the kithra and the aulos rising and falling like breath. Fingers learn strings by habit, lips learn reeds by habit, and a melody hangs in the air long after the player has paused. Listeners do not rush to praise, they let the last tone settle before they nod. At home the lyre rests on a low table while lamps are set in a soft line along the wall. A youth practices a scale until it no longer feels like exercise but like a small stream finding its bed. A parent listens from the doorway and smiles without calling attention to the smile. Poetry is a companion to these hours, a careful recitation of lines that have lived in mouths for generations. A short hymn to a god, a fable with a clear turn, a fragment that holds a world. These pieces are carried easily in the memory and are shared easily with a friend. The voice keeps even measure, the hand keeps still. In the courtyard neighbors gather without hurry, bringing a small cup and a simple plate. There is bread with olives and cheese, a fig or two, and the talk that rises is modest and kind. Children play a quiet game with stones, drawing a small grid and moving counters from square to square. On festival evenings the city opens its spaces to dance, steps traced with gentle precision, hands joined and released with courtesy. The circle forms and reforms, and the pattern is learned from the feet of elders. Laughter is soft, delight is steady, the music does not strain. At the gymnasium leisure becomes graceful exercise, a measured run in cool dust, a game of ball that keeps the hands quick and the mind attentive. Bodies are not pushed to spectacle, they are guided to harmony, and afterward there is oil for the skin and quiet conversation in the shade. Symposia take shape when friends recline on low couches and share modest cups of wine water to taste. A host sets a bowl at the center, a lyre is placed within reach, and topics are set out like small dishes, to be tasted and considered one by one. Arguments do not flare, they unfold, and they fold again when the point is understood. Riddles and word games are welcomed here, a test not of victory but of nimble manners. A question is posed, heads incline, and a solution is offered with a smile that asks for no applause. The room warms with shared effort, and then cools again when silence is allowed to enter. Storytelling returns at these tables, journeys recalled, meetings retold, a kindness remembered with gratitude. Older men speak more than boys, but the boys listen as much as men, and they learn the texture of a narrative that does not hurry. Somewhere a cup is refilled, and somewhere a lamp is trimmed. Games of chance are modest, a handful of knucklebones, a small toss that amuses without binding the heart. Skill games are more loved, a throw that rewards practice, a move that rewards foresight, a balance that gives both players satisfaction. The game ends before the night grows heavy. In the countryside leisure takes the form of walking at the edge of fields while the day cools. A shepherd greets a neighbor from across a low wall, a farmer pauses to feel the breeze, and a child picks up a smooth stone and keeps it. The land does not demand, it invites. Near the sea a few friends fish from rocks with a line and a simple hook, speaking little and watching the water fold itself again and again. The catch is small, the contentment is not, and the walk home is slow. The shore holds the footprints until the next tide erases them. Public baths in some cities offer another kind of rest, rooms of warm air and cool water where the talk is easy and the mind loosens. A friend is greeted, a shoulder is patted, and news is exchanged with good humor. Cleanliness and conversation belong comfortably together. The marketplace after closing has its own light, stalls empty and swept, colonnades taking on the color of evening. A pair of youths practice a speech where no one will interrupt, another pair measure steps for a dance that will belong to a festival day. Leisure borrows streets when the streets are willing. Some evenings a philosopher is found near a doorway speaking with whoever will listen. The questions are not heavy, they are clear. What is friendship? What is courage? What is enough? People stand for a time and then go on, carrying a small thought like a smooth stone in the pocket. At home the lamp is lowered and a family plays a quiet round of a guessing game, the prize being only a nod and a word of praise. A child laughs once and then covers the mouth, not wanting to wake a younger sibling. Sleep waits at the edge of the room and does not press. As night deepens the city becomes a map of small circles of light, doorways and courtyards marked by their own stars. Voices fade, a dog turns twice and settles, and the sky seems closer. Leisure has done its work, the mind is smooth and the heart is even. Across the year these moments of rest hold the shape of the culture as firmly as labor does. The arts are practiced without vanity, friendship is conducted without demand, and the body moves without strain. In this way leisure becomes a school for living. The plays will be staged again, the songs will be sung again, the cups will be lifted and set down again, and each repetition will feel like a return rather than a task. The city knows its own pace and keeps it. In the calm of these hours people remember that joy can be quiet. When the last lamp is covered and the last guest steps into the night, the house receives its silence like a gift. Floors cool, embers dim, and the door is secured. Sleep comes as it always does, softly and sufficiently. Tomorrow the work will begin again, and so will the rest, because both belong to a life that seeks balance. The day divides itself evenly when guided by habit, and the city remains whole. The night carries this promise forward. Chapter 10. A Day in the Life. Now let us weave together the threads of our journey into the tapestry of a single tranquil day. Picture the first light at dawn when the household awakens, the father departing for work with a quiet blessing, the mother preparing meals and tending lovingly to the children, and the gentle hands of helpers echoing the soft rhythm of duty. As the sun climbs, each task, whether in the bustle of the agora or the humble labor in the fields, unfolds with deliberate calm. Before the house stirs too much, a small bowl is set at the altar niche and a lamp is touched alight. A few words are spoken, not to overwhelm the room but to align it. The air receives the smoke evenly and seems to smooth itself in response. Water is drawn and bread is sliced and the day's tools are gathered in orderly bundles. A sandal strap is knotted carefully, a cloak is laid over a shoulder, and a hand checks the latch on the door. Each gesture is familiar and so each gesture is light. In the street the neighbors greet one another with small nods and brief words. Children hold hands and step around puddles that reflect the pale sky, and an older man steadies a basket on his back with a practiced tilt of the head. The city wakes without effort because it knows how to wake. At the fields outside the walls farmers move with even pace, turning the soil or tending vines where the dew has lingered. A line of olive trees keeps the horizon calm, and birds cross from one side to the other as if counting time. The work is not hurried, it is measured, and so the body does not resist it. Near the water the fishermen check their lines and their nets with the same economy of motion. A boat slides along the shallows while a boy steps into the surf to rinse a basket. The sea answers every action with a small sound that approves. In the agora the first shutters rise and the first baskets are set upon boards. A stall displays bread and another displays small jars and another a neat row of lamps. Under the stower a notice board receives a fresh tablet and a scribe's hand moves with assurance. The buyers arrive in no rush, touching, testing, asking, and the sellers answer without haste. A scale settles, a coin slides, a nod completes an exchange. The morning keeps its calm and the square keeps its order. At home a mother teaches a child to trace a letter on wax, to count pebbles on a board, to sing a simple line that holds its own shape. Learning comes like breathing when the room is quiet and the hands are patient. A sister watches and learns how to help without being told. In the small school a pedagogue stands by the door while boys repeat a line together. The teachers read pen scratches lightly on a shard to show a curve and a stroke. Mistakes are smoothed away and the surface is made ready again. Midday gathers its heat and awnings are drawn lower where the streets are brightest. A simple meal is taken in the shade, bread and cheese and a few olives, and a cup of watered wine that is shared. Voices drop and time rests. In the workshop, a potter turns his wheel evenly and a smith lifts his hammer and lets it fall without anger. A carpenter checks a joint with the tip of a finger, and a weaver moves the shuttle as if counting a calm heartbeat. Craft is another word for patience made with tools. Business under the stower continues in modest measure, a contract witnessed, a message carried, a question about a boundary answered in a steady voice. A herald reads a notice to those who have paused, and then he puts the tablet away and walks on. The day holds together as if stitched. Children run errands at a pace that suits their legs, a loaf to fetch, a word to deliver, a bunch of herbs to carry with both hands. They learn the faces that belong to corners and the voices that belong to doors. The city teaches simply by being itself. As the sun tilts, the work softens and faces lift a little more often. A porter rolls his shoulders and smiles at a joke that was not new yesterday either. A dog finds a square of shade and defends it only with sleep. In the late afternoon, the road from the harbor brings carts and quiet greetings. Amphorae marked with careful signs are lifted down and placed where they will be opened. Dust lingers in the air and then settles by degrees until the stones shine again. Toward evening, a group gathers to practice a dance for a coming festival, steps placed like stitches across a courtyard. A lyre offers its line, an aloes offers its answer, and the pattern forms without strain. Even practice can be a rest when the tempo is right. At home, lamps are trimmed and set upon low shelves, the table is arranged, and hands are washed with water that remembers the morning. A grandmother tells a small story while the bowls are filled. The house tilts toward contentment. In the late afternoon, the road from the harbor brings carts and quiet greetings. Amphorae marked with careful signs are lifted down and placed where they will be opened. Dust lingers in the air and then settles by degrees until the stones shine again. Toward evening, a group gathers to practice a dance for a coming festival, steps placed like stitches across a courtyard. A lyre offers its line, an aloes offers its answer, and the pattern forms without strain. Even practice can be a rest when the tempo is right. At home, lamps are trimmed and set upon low shelves, the table is arranged, and hands are washed with water that remembers the family eats without ceremony and yet with gratitude, passing bread, sharing salt, and noticing without speaking that the day has arrived safely at this point. A child is allowed to tell a little tale and is listened to as if the tale were longer. The room is a circle drawn by attention. After the meal, there is a walk in the lane where the heat has loosened its hold. Neighbors trade a remark or two, a gate is secured, a pot is moved under cover. The sky takes on a color that parents will remember and children will someday name. Night is welcomed with small gestures, a lamp lowered, a door bar slid into its sockets, a final glance to see that tools are where tools belong. The street narrows to a thread of sound, and then to almost none. A star appears where it was expected to appear. The house settles into quiet roles, one person reads a few lines, another sets out tomorrow's items, another carries a sleeping child to bed. The floor holds the day's footsteps and then returns to stillness. Even the air seems to lie down. Before sleep, a few words are offered at the altar and the flame is thanked for its service. The bowl is cleaned, the cloth is smoothed, and the niche receives its ordinary dignity. The mind follows these motions and finds its own order. In this final scene, the city and the household share a single rhythm, labor and rest, passing the baton without ceremony. Every whisper of the wind, every soft echo in stone corridors, and every tender farewell at the close of day joins a larger music. The night gathers all of this and keeps it until morning.